Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia lost can be found. Today's video is the second entry in my squad showcase series, where I take a look at your teams and provide my thoughts and feedback. This time around, I asked you to submit your light teams, and keep in mind this took place throughout last week, so some of these submissions happened before Resplendent Refrain and an Enchanting Ensemble, and some of them happened afterward, so that's why you might not see Elias, Lucretia, and Vixel as often. As far as guidelines go, I just ask that you submit a team with at least 3 light units, and this is an opportunity for us to take a look at the pool of light units in general as well. Thank you so much everyone who took part. I did get 30 submissions on Twitter, so I am going with that for this video. That should be more than enough to take up quite a bit of time here. To paint the picture, it's a cold day outside, snow is on the ground, I have my coffee here, but there's a ray of sunshine coming through my window. There's some light amid that snow, it's gonna melt soon. It's a good day, and it's a good time to look at your light teams. So here we go. Starting off, let's talk about the pool of light units in general. The first big set of light units are those who resist Curse, so I've listed all of those here on screen. The top row has Curse Res going up to 100%, while the bottom row has it only up to 50 or potentially 75% in the final ring of their mana circles for the 3 stars, except for a couple which I'll talk about in a moment. Now besides Curse Res, Poison Res is also quite common in the light pool. So Luca gets 25% Poison Res in the final ring of his mana circle once a 5-star. Julieta and Ron get up to 100%, and Raymond, Hope, and Malka get 25% as a 3-star, 50% as a 4-star, and 75% as a 5-star. So these are the 2 biggest resistances that light units typically have. However, there is one more resistance that's kind of new, and that is Sleep Res. So Vixel came with this, it goes up to 100%, and Estelle also has a random 25% when she's a 5-star that she can gain access to. So this kind of gives you an idea of the light pool as a whole. Curse and Poison are the 2 ailments that are commonly inflicted by shadow enemies. So for instance, Zodiark in the Dragon Trials will inflict Curse, and the Shadow Imperial Onslaught contains hazards and enemies which inflicts poison. So this is kind of the lay of the land, and as I said in my last video, ailment res is kind of the first thing you think about when you're trying to design a team for a particular task. So I think in the context of this event, Curse Res is the most useful because that's what Sabinok inflicts. So that's something I'm going to be thinking about when I look at your teams. However, I did say you don't have to submit a raid specific team. I just want to see some light units so we can discuss them. So here are the numbers on your submissions, and I was really surprised to see that Halloween Elisan and Amane were actually in the majority of people's teams. Each of those got more than half, 16 out of 30. The other thing that I was sad to see was Ron and Malka really got no love on these teams, and it's understandable they have Poison Res. A lot of you are gearing up for the raid, or were gearing up for the raid, so that kind of makes sense. I don't have Ron, I do have Malka, so I'll have to do a spotlight on Malka one day, and maybe Ron if I summon him. Besides that, Julieta was also quite common with 14 out of 30. I think that's one of those things where anyone who has her because of how strong she is will just include her, so that could be why that's so high. Hildegard also quite high, but not as high, so maybe people just haven't summoned her as much. It's a pretty small sample, pretty small pool to work with.
Okay, here goes.
Here we go, let's get into the first team that we're looking at today. First up, we have a submission by Off Rhythm, and this team looks pretty good. I like how many elemental weapons you have. Gale of Beauty seems like a nice choice on Malara since it pairs well with her Broken Punisher, and that extra dragon time is good in a raid because a lot of the people that you'll run with are running a dragon prep or shapeshift prep strategy. I also like Plunder Pals on Halloween Elisan. She is all about her skills, and the extra skill damage doesn't hurt at all. Halloween Althemia with Luisa's Hobbies makes sense. I really think these free worm prints are very good, so that's perfect for a healer. And Amane has your shapeshift prep, so that looks just right for the context of the raid. Looking at the rest of your light units, I definitely think you've made a good selection up there. I don't think there's anyone I would really swap out. It looks like you've promoted your Malora. If you hadn't, I would say you could potentially put Elias there or even Luca. But yeah, good job. I don't think I would really make too many changes, if any at all. Alright, next we have a submission by Lost Echo who says, I should start enhancing my weapons later. Okay, so your team looks to be a little bit lower level. That'll pick up in time, don't worry about that. Definitely try spin those wings, I see that you have a lot there. And you have Hildegard, Elisanne, Amani, and Irfan. So one of the things I noticed right away is you have a healing Wyrmprint on Elisanne, and you have a skill haste and attack or strength Wyrmprint on Hildegard. So I would go ahead and swap those two Wyrmprints, and I would also swap those dragons, because Hildegard as a healer, her healing will scale off of the extra HP that she has. So Jupiter provides a little bit of HP. That's why that would be better on her, and more strength would be better on Elisanne. You could consider a 3-star light dragon on your Fawn, depending on how much your Nidhogg has been unbound. That might actually give you more stats at its max level, even without unbinding. That's what I found in my experience, that sometimes my level 20 dragons will beat out my 5 stars. Just test that out and see. Okay, next submission is by Anini Mouse, and they say, none of the other 3-star line adventurers that I pulled seemed better than a second healer. I like Luca, so he stays. Ron talks like a bored idiot besides. Once a new banner hits, I'll see if either Hope or Estelle will be warming the bench. Oh, well, I feel bad for Ron. I haven't summoned him. I don't really know what he talks like, but I like his design visually. So you have Julieta, always strong, Luca, Estelle, and Hope. It looks like your Wyrmprints are nicely lined up for Estelle and Hope to be healers. And they have the dragons among the ones available to you, which provide HP, so that's good. Luca, Gentle Winds, I think that makes a lot of sense on him because he already has a built-in full HP ability. But I would say maybe consider controlling Luca because Julieta will be fine on her own. If you really want to take no damage with Luca and activate or be able to utilize those two abilities, he might need you to control him manually. And the Better Together Wyrmprint on Julieta seems okay too. You actually could consider using the event Wyrmprint, I think, as the snow falls, now that you have access to that. Since Julieta doesn't have Curse Res, she'd appreciate the 20%, and that last recovery would pair nicely with her own last recovery. If I'm not mistaken, I think she has that. But overall, good job. Having 2 healers, I think, will help, especially light ones who can survive some of Sabinok's attacks, will help with a deathless run. So if that's what you're going for on the EX, this seems like a very good team. Alright, and next up we have a submission by Care Bear HD. They've provided some screenshots of their Wyrmprints, and their comment mostly contains detail about the levels of everything and what everything is. So first of all, props on your Wyrmprint levels. I mean, that's pretty crazy. Those are all 3 excellent Wyrmprints, so good on you for investing in them. You've basically done with Valiant Crown what I suggest most people do with Plunder Pals who don't have a max unbound Valiant Crown, but also you have 3 natural 5 stars on your team. So this is a very strong team. I can't really say I would change too much. Valiant Crown definitely has nice synergy with Julieta's skills. She can increase her own defense, so that works out very well for the strength double buff. Jeanne d'Arc seems pretty well placed there, but even better on Hilda, I would say, because Hildegard gets that extra HP and can heal even more. You could consider changing your weapons eventually. Those 3-star elemental Halloween weapons will get surpassed by like a 5-star tier 2 weapon, and a 5-star tier 1 will be a little bit better in stats, but you do lose out on a skill, so that is something to consider. Next up, we have a submission by Non-New, and they say, I am trying to push for the title, hoping to get it before the event ends. I also have 2 unicorns, but haven't been able to level them just yet. So this definitely looks like a team oriented toward the raid with those 3 shapeshift prep Wyrmprints. In my experience, this seems to still be meta or popular. A lot of teams I've seen have been running this. So it's good that you have it. I mean, it sends a little bit of a signal about what you're trying to accomplish, which is hard to do with just the stickers, so that's good. If the title specifically is what you want, then I wouldn't worry about Unicorn. Those Unicorns are going to be nice eventually for Vixel because HP benefits healing, but for the time being, for the title, you probably want the most strength possible, so I think this setup makes sense. Overall, the one thing I might consider changing would be to switch Vixel with Halloween Althemia, who you have in your barracks there. The main reason is Halloween Althemia has Curse Res and Vixel has Sleep Res, and also Halloween Althemia has an attacking skill, so depending on whether Vixel's Energize is actually relevant to you, Halloween Althemia might be a little bit of a better choice. that Energize could actually matter when you combine it with the fact you have Elias, but I think Halloween Althemia will be a little bit better for the event. Let me know what you think about that. Next up, we have a submission by Leon, and Leon wants to know if they should replace Hildegard because healing has reduced effects during the raid, and they're thinking about replacing Hildegard with Naveed. So just to clarify, healing has reduced effects, but the good thing about healing is it heals all teams. So that's the reason why the effects are reduced. So I don't think that's something to really concern oneself with. It's actually not too bad of a thing. So I definitely think you want Hildegard for this event. Hildegard looks extremely powerful, so I wouldn't really replace her with Naveed, and she doesn't have to deal with the annoyance of Curse like Naveed would. Other than that, I think you have a really nice team here. I always like to see one with the shadows on dagger units. I feel like it fits them very well. And Lioness has a nice combo with Valiant Crown and Souvenir Axe, so that's pretty cool to see. Elias, maybe not the best user of Plunder Palace, having only one attacking skill, but I could also just see that being one of the Wyrmprints you have that gives you the most stats or is most beneficial in that sense. So, and your Hildegard just looks like a monster with that Unbalanced Wyrmprint and that Jeanne d'Arc, so I would definitely keep her. She looks really strong. Other than that, also very cool to see that you promoted Irfan. Okay, now we come to a submission by Yoru13, who says, here's my light team currently, still need some mana circles. Would use Amane over Edward if I had her. Here's my Wyrmprints as well. My Plunder Pals is only unbound once. Started playing during Halloween event. Only other light dragon I have is Unicorn, and I transform into Jeanne d'Arc. Okay, so pretty nice selection of Wyrmprints you have there. Thank you for sharing that. It seems like a lot of your Wyrmprints are max level, and I really wouldn't change anything with what you've selected. You could look at Gentle Winds from Valera. I'm not sure if that would provide more stats than Better Together. It's also more demanding because you have to keep full HP or try to use its second ability. But in general, I do like Better Together once max levels. It's pretty easy to maintain that strength boost when your HP is over 70%. Other than that, looking at your barracks, I see that you have your maxed out Hildegard, so I assume you could run that instead of Halloween Althemia, but you kind of want to get that adventure EXP. That makes sense to me. As far as dragons go, I don't really think I would change anything if your only other dragon is Unicorn. This looks like a good team. I think that this shows, especially looking at your Wyrmprints, how sometimes the stats are just as important as the abilities. So the fact that you have a max unbound Silk Lens of Hand, that's going to be better for you than your Fresh Perspective or your Flower in the Fray or your once unbound Plunder Pals. So I think this is a really good example of that, where you have to take into consideration the stats and the abilities as well. And anyway, the skill damage ability on Silk Lens of Hand isn't a bad one whatsoever. Next up, we have a submission by Basti, who says, I was really lucky this banner with Lucretia, Cupid, and Resounding Rendition. And I see right there on your leader slot on your team, all three of those in action, so congratulations on your good luck. This is a pretty solid team comp. I don't think I would really change much here. It depends on what you have available to you. I think the only thing that stands out is maybe Ryozin's Wyrmprint and Dragon. If you have a better dragon available, you could always put that in, but Astral Imp will do fine otherwise. I do think that Plunder Pals there is a little bit weaker on Ryozin because his first skill is a defensive buff. So if you have some other Wyrmprints around, some other 5-star Wyrmprints, you could consider running one of those instead. But I think that the other Wyrmprint choices you've made are really solid. Your dragons seem to be lined up really well. So nice work with this team, and congrats on your summons. Following that, we have a submission by Silverwolf, who asks whether they should replace Hope with their leveled up Vixel. And just looking at the rest of your team looks really solid. I like that you promoted Irfan. Congrats on that as well. I do think maybe you could switch Jupiter and Jeanne d'Arc. It kind of depends on how many times your Jeanne d'Arc has been unbound. Because if she's providing more overall stats, then definitely leave her on Lucretia. But if she's mostly just providing HP, you could just give that to Elias to make Elias tankier and take the extra strength on Lucretia. But in general, your Wyrmprints and Dragons look really solid. As for replacing Vixel with Hope, I do think it's a good idea just because Hope doesn't have Curse Res anyway. So the main drawback to Vixel in the context of this raid is that Vixel has Sleep Res, but Hope has Poison Res anyway. So it's not like Hope was extra resistant compared to Vixel. And I think that having both Elias and Vixel together, you may get one energized or maybe two during a really long raid battle. So there's a little bit of advantage to that. And just in general, I think that Vixel's ability ability to provide regen is definitely welcome compared to Hope. I was mistaken in my showcase review. I thought that Vixel also cured stun, but that is incorrect. That seems to have been a mistake in the wiki that I didn't catch. So I posted a correction on my video, but just so you know, Vixel doesn't cure stun even once you upgrade his skill, but I still think he's going to be a little bit better for you on this team. Now we come to a submission by Ed, and congrats Ed on your promoted Amane. That's cool to see a 5-star Amane. So this looks like a solid team. I'm guessing by his level, Vixel is a recent addition. I would say maybe consider bringing in someone like Halloween Edward instead of Vixel, especially if you're going for the raid, because Halloween Edward is going to have curse res, at least to a certain extent. And I don't know if you really need 2 healers on one team. Doesn't mean you're losing out on a co-ability as well. Otherwise though, if Vixel is just there because you want to level him up, you like the character, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The Worthy Rivals is kind of an interesting choice on Halloween Althemia. I do think it pairs nicely with her innate skill prep, especially since she's a healer. It's not one I would normally think of because I mostly associate it with Broken Punisher, but I'm sure it can get the job done, so definitely let me know how that's been working out for you. Okay, and the next team is submitted by Lom, and Lom also gave us a screenshot of their worm prints. So here we see Worthy Rivals again, this time in the context of an attacker on Amane, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Double up on her skill prep, double up on her Broken Punisher. That's a really nice setup that you have, and congratulations on pulling Cupid. That's going to work super well with her too. Flash of Genius on her Fawn makes sense because a dagger unit can typically maintain a high combo count, but the wind res isn't particularly relevant. That's okay though, I think that happens sometimes. You just want the thing that gives you the most stats. Now I do think you could consider switching over Tough Love to Irfan because Irfan has 2 attacking skills, so that will be nice on Irfan versus Elias, who only has 1 attacking skill. And then maybe you could even use the raid worm print on Elias to shore up Elias's curse res a little bit, and because Elias is more of a tanky archer. I am also unsure of how the combo based abilities work for AI controlled units, if it scales off your main unit's combo or if they have their own combo count. Okay, now we come to a submission by Noodle-sama, and Noodle-sama has a longer and awesome comment. I'll go ahead and let you read that as I look at the team, but their main question is whether to switch out Hope for Vixel, and once again, I think that probably Vixel will be a bit better because Hope doesn't have curse res anyway, and Vixel can provide regen, which is nice. So looking at the rest of the team, Yuden, I'd like how you've utilized him here. So you mentioned you use Yuden for player XP, and I do as well. Phoenix is a nice choice though in the context of a raid. It'll make it a little bit easier for Yuden to survive, and it's also kind of an emergency healing button if you need it, to where you can switch to Yuden, become a dragon, and utilize Phoenix to help out the rest of your teammates. So I do like that quite a lot. Otherwise, I wouldn't change too much. I think you could potentially switch Halloween Silk and Jeanne d'Arc. Just look at which one's going to give you more strength, as I think that will benefit Elisanne the most. And Jeanne d'Arc is perfect for a healer because they want HP, but really good job. I think that this looks like a very solid team. Now we have a submission by Jared the Unseen, and Jared says, my current light setup, I'm prioritizing units with curse resistance since that seems to be what the raid boss will inflict. Well, you were right. If curse isn't too big a problem, I'll drop Althemia for the skill haste co-ability on Ron. And good job prioritizing curse resistance, other than Julieta, but Julieta is so strong. I mean, it's not really an issue. I don't think you want to necessarily bring in Linus just because she doesn't have curse resistance. And looking at your worm prints, I wouldn't really suggest any changes. Same with your dragons, with the exception of Amane. That's just going to come down to how many times your Juggernaut has been unbound and who else you have available to you. I would imagine a free Jupiter could potentially provide more stats than that Juggernaut, so that is something to consider if you want to go that route, or even a 3-star Light Dragon if you have one. But if your Juggernaut is like max unbound and max level, that's probably the reason you have it there, so won't call that into question too much. You could consider controlling Julieta if you're worried about curse and want to try to avoid that, but Elisanne has been great for this raid for me, so I think you'd have no problems with the raid. Alright, so next we have a submission by Proto, and hopefully you don't notice too much of a change in the audio, but I did take a brief intermission. We're about halfway through now. So Proto's comment is, waiting on leveling until the event releases, debating on promoting Halloween Edward. Thought, Sisters of the Anvil would be fun on Julieta, but could swap it out. Lucas Prank can replace Plunder Pals. No other light dragons. I like to swap to Julieta to shapeshift and swap back after it's done. So I like your thinking with Sisters of the Anvil and comboing that with Souvenir Axe and Julieta's skill. I do think it might still be a little bit weaker than some of your 5-star worm prints that you submitted, but it's worth trying out. Julieta doesn't have Curse Res, so you could also try use the event worm print on her to shore that up a little bit. Other than that, pretty cool to see your Jewels of the Sun. Those are quite strong. I think they're great on both Elisanne and Luca. And as for promoting Halloween Edward, I think that it's probably best to save Eldwater for now. It certainly won't hurt. It's not a whole lot of Eldwater, but I don't know that Halloween Edward's particularly strong. He is the only light blade unit right now, so that is something to consider. In general, I just recommend promoting the units that are your favorites, or maybe Yuden for player EXP, but mostly just the ones who are your favorites. So that's my advice there. Overall, not any other changes I would suggest though. Looks like a pretty solid team. Now we have a team from Dragalia, and their comment is, here's my light team for the event. Don't have much to say. So this team looks pretty good as well. I like that you have Gale of Beauty on Julieta, especially if she's going to be the one you transform into during the event. So I think the extra Dragon Time and Broken Punisher is really nice against the raid boss. Hope has a good healing worm print. Elisanne has a good skill damage worm print, especially if you are a free to play or lower spinning player. Just in general, because you can max unbind those, and it looks like you have for both. And then Luca has Evening of Luxury. So I think that Luca, maybe you want to control Luca because he's going to be the most demanding to play. Both his innate ability and the ability on Evening of Luxury want him to stay at full HP, and it's going to be hard for him to do that just as a random AI unit. Other than that, looking at your collection, I can't say I would change a whole lot. Now that you've gotten Elias, you could consider swapping in Elias, and if you decide to level up or add some mana circles to your Halloween Althemia, her Curse Res is going to make her a little bit better than Hope for the purposes of the event. And looking at your worm prints, I do think that you've chosen kind of the best selection of what you have. If you don't want to control Luca, you could also consider running something like Tough Love on Luca, because Luca doesn't mind the extra skill damage, and he is a little bit frail, so he might trigger the less offense. Now we have a team from Juan Olvera, and they say, my light team has been good to me so far. So you have a Raymond, who you've promoted, Ryosen, Amane, and then Estelle, who you've promoted as well. It looks like you have Sisters of the Anvil on Ryosen. It's pretty cool. That will combo with Ryosen's ability to buff the team's defense, or his skill rather, and that means he'll get both a healing double buff and a strength double buff, which is nice. Plunder Pals makes sense on Raymond since he has 2 attacking skills, but I do think you want a more aggressive dragon on Raymond, so I would suggest swapping Astral Imp and Unicorn. And since Estelle's a healer, she wants the extra HP from Unicorn. Other than that, I also like how you used of Tricks and Treats. That skill prep is going to combine nicely with Amane's skill prep, and it also provides Shadow Res, which is perfect for the event. So overall, pretty nice team. Looks like your might is still pretty low, and maybe you're newer to the game. Definitely invest in facilities in your castle. That's going to be one of the biggest things that boosts up your entire team. Now we have a submission from Studio 188, and they comment that they still need some levels. No worries about that. I won't comment too much on the levels. I think that that's something everybody can work on, and really you don't get a lot of your power from your levels. A lot of it is the mana circles, your facilities, your gear. So you do get some stats, but nothing super major. You don't get any skill or ability changes. Now I would suggest maybe swapping Jeanne d'Arc and Halloween Silk, because Elisanne can utilize the extra strength from Halloween Silk a bit more, and Althemia as a healer will utilize that HP from Jeanne d'Arc better. Flash of Genius as well is one you could consider replacing, maybe with even the event Wormprint, just because I don't think the abilities are going to be super relevant on Luca, either the combo ability or the Wind Res. Of course, the Wind Res won't matter for the raid, but in most contexts you'll take your light team too. I don't think it'll matter too much. You could even put Better Together on Luca maybe, so I see that's on Julieta, and give her the new event Wormprint. Next up, we have one from Ace, who is debating whether or not they should replace Shadow Althemia with Halloween Edward. So looking at the rest of your team, I would say maybe switch Julieta's dragon with Elisanne's. I think that Elisanne can utilize the extra strength a little more, especially if you're controlling her. And Jeanne d'Arc might be better for a tank like Julieta. I like the Valiant Crown combo with Julieta with her second skill and the skill in that Souvenir Axe. I do think that Luis's Hobbies doesn't really make sense on Luca. That Wormprint is mostly going to enhance healing, so you really want that on a healer. You could just be getting a lot of raw stats from it, but even then I would say maybe just use the new event Wyrmprint that we get for free as the snow falls. Now, as for your question about Althemia, I do think maybe you want to switch in Halloween Edward if he's someone you like and want to start training up. You may not need to. It is a bit odd to see a water dragon on your Althemia, so maybe you don't have a shadow dragon that's leveled up or unbound, but I would suggest replacing that with Zodiark since you can get that for free. That will probably give you more stats than that Poliahu if you level up that Zodiark and max unbind it, which you can do for free like I said. Overall, I think that choice is totally up to you about whether to use Edward or not. If you find Althemia dying a lot as you play the event or other content, then you could bring in Edward. He is going to have innate shadow resistance, and that could help a little bit as well. Now we have a team from Noria, and Noria updated their submission, and this comment says their Halloween Silk is fully unbound, Bond is level 30, and it's max level 80. They also provided some other details about the rest of their team before they swapped it out. But looking at your team, pretty cool to see you've got a nice setup for the raid. You have 3-star Shapeshift Prep Wyrmprints on your other 3 units, and then on your main units, Elias is going to have that innate ability to do extra damage to the raid boss. Just so you know, of course, that as the Snow Falls Wyrmprint doesn't have a raid ability this time, it's not going to do extra damage to the boss, so it might not be the best there on Elias, but it is flavorful, and the extra curse res certainly doesn't hurt Elias either. As far as dragons go, the only thing I would consider is, do you have someone that's going to give Edward more stats? If not, Poseidon makes sense. It's possible, since Poseidon is a 5-star, that it could be the most stats that you're getting, but if you have another dragon like Jupiter, you might want to check whether you just get more stats from Jupiter or not. Now we have a team from Brentwood James who says, currently working on Amane's 4-star Elemental. Well, congratulations on working on that, and very strong team once again. So Amane has Gentle Winds, which is going to give her some skill prep. Very nice to combine with her innate skill prep, and when she's at full HP, it's going to enhance her strength. Looks like Julieta has Tough Love and a Light Elemental Axe. So Tough Love is going to be pretty good for extra skill damage on her, and as a tank, if she takes a lot of hits, that last offense will kick in, but hopefully Hildegard will be able to keep her healthy. Destiny's Hand provides skill prep and also provides recovery potency. I do think it's good, but if you have Luis's hobbies, especially max unbound and max level, I do think that's going to be a little bit better for Hildegard. Sisters of the Anvil on Ryozan too, to combo with his defense buff for that strength double buff, and I wouldn't really change anything looking at your barracks. Now we have a team from Caden the Dog, and Caden says, not so lucky with light dragons. Don't worry, Caden, I like what you've done with your light dragons. Despite that, let's see. Yeah, I definitely think your dragons are pretty well lined up if those are the ones that you have. I will say you could put Moondrake on Julieta since she's a tank, and give Halloween Silk to one of your other units since all 3 of them are more attack oriented. But if you're playing as Julieta and want the extra strength on her, she's a powerhouse, so she'll take the strength, she'll take the HP. She has the highest base stats in the game, which is awesome. Other than that, looking at your Wyrmprints, I'm not so sure about Flash of Genius. You have to keep a pretty high combo count, and like I said earlier, I don't know how that works on AI, but the second ability on Flash of Genius, Wind Res, isn't going to be relevant on most contexts where you'll bring a light team, so you could consider swapping that out. Otherwise, it looks pretty solid. You might also want to swap the Wyrmprints on Luca and Edward. Luca, I think being a ranged unit, will be able to keep at a higher HP more easily, so he'll be able to more utilize Crystallian Envoy. Next up, we have a submission from W, who says, looking to replace Hamane when I pull something decent, hopefully a close range attacker. So right away I notice you have all 5-star Wyrmprints. That's pretty cool to see, and it also looks like your dragons are pretty well aligned. I wouldn't really make any changes to this team, to be honest. I do think you could consider controlling Elisanne if you're not doing that already. The thing that stands out about that to me is she is the only close range attacker on this team, so I think using her and being able to direct your AI out of enemy hit patterns and out of traffic could be a little bit more effective for you than using Malora, but it's really hard for me to make that judgment. Honestly though, just looking at the Wyrmprints, I wouldn't switch anything, and I wouldn't switch anything on the dragons, so really good job. Hopefully you get your close range attacker, but Amane is not a bad unit either, so good luck. After that, we have a submission from Platinum who says, I merely optimized my team on the first screenshot. I plan to come in with 3 light units, seeing as we're probably going to be guaranteed a free unit. So who should I ditch in the meantime? So now you'll know if you didn't when you posted, that the free unit is Elias. So with that in mind, let's take a look at your team. Irfan, I love that, one with the shadows on him. You've also promoted him once, cool to see. Lindworm makes sense. Hildegard seems nicely set up. I would say maybe swap Jupiter and Unicorn in terms of Julieta and Hildegard, because Hildegard will work fine with pure HP. When you have the option, Julieta likes both strength and HP as a close range attacker too. Other than that, maybe swap the Worm Prince on Amane and Julieta too, because Julieta can buff her own defense, and that means she'll be able to take advantage of Valiant's Crown. And Amane being a ranged unit, she can probably keep her HP high for better together. If you were going to take someone off this team, I would probably say take off Irfan for Elias. It's hard to say that. I do like Irfan, and you've obviously promoted him. However, both Irfan and Elias are only going to have curse res of 50%. So that's the reason I say maybe take off Irfan, or even Julieta if you're willing to part with her. But I think Julieta is just strong enough that even without curse res, she's worth having on your team. Looking at the rest of your barracks, I wouldn't really make any changes. I think you've got a good selection here. Definitely let me know what you think of Elias. Did you decide to include Elias or not? I'd be curious to know what you did. Following Platinum, we have a team from Kazekage773 who says, I plan to roll on the upcoming banner. So this team was submitted before then, and Kazekage has Ryozan, Estelle, Edward, and Luca. Now, once again, with your dragons, this has come up quite a bit in this video so far. I do think you want Unicorn on your healer, Estelle, and that would mean putting Halloween Silk on Luca. As far as Wormprints though, I think you've done a good job. The Night Stalker Wormprint, you could consider replacing if you have something else. I think that freeze res won't really be super relevant, and the Force Strike on Lances is still not that great. So that's the one I would say you could probably replace. And with Estelle, I would just point out that if you have the free Wormprint Luisa's Hobbies and you level it up and max and bind it, you are probably going to be getting more stats and recovery potency from that, or at least as much as Give Me Your Wounded. So that's another thing you could consider. Looking at the rest of your light units, I don't think I would really make any changes though. I think you've got a pretty good team comp here, and I hope the event is going well for you. I hope you pulled well on the banner. Now we have a team from Kudo, and Kudo says, here is my light team. Granted, some dragons are not max unbound and not 5-star weapons along with Prince. Also, Gauge Acceleration and Broken Punisher is really good. I definitely agree with that sentiment, and no worries, pretty much none of my dragons are max unbound except the free story dragons. And I know that not everyone has 5-star weapons and Wormprints. It actually looks like you have a rare selection of Wormprints here, so that's cool to see. As for specifics, once again, I do think you want to swap the dragons on your Hildegard and your Julieta. Give Julieta that extra strength, throw that HP on Hildegard. I think that's going to be a little bit better in most cases. The Wormprint on Ryozan, I'm seeing this a lot in this video. I don't really know that this is a good Wormprint in general. You're going to get some stats since it's a 5-star, but I wonder if you wouldn't be better off as you have it, just using your max unbound Plunder Pal, something like that. So that is one to consider. The Wormprint on Julieta, Crystallian Envoy, even though that provides flame res, the first ability is so strong that it's generally good on most units if they can keep their HP high enough, which with Hildegard you should be able to. Those are really the only comments I would make. Now we have a submission from Chris, and Chris says, unlike my win team, my light team is super set. Usually in Yuden spots is Halloween Althemia, standing pretty with her signature staff, Give Me Your Wounded, now using Luisa's Hobbies, and Jean. Taking her place will be Elias with a 5-star tier 1 bow, of Tricks and Treats, and Jean or Hinata. Very cool, thank you for the extra comments as well, Chris. I see your 5-star Amane, so congratulations on that. I do love that Wormprint you've got on Amane. Happier times, that extra skill haste and extra skill damage. If you can keep Amane at full health, it's going to be nice. I like how your dragons are arranged as well. Plunder Palace makes sense on Edward. Valiant Crown, perfect for Ryozan with Ryozan's innate defense buff. I think that works out for you pretty well. The set that you have in mind seems to make sense. You could of course put Jeanne d'Arc on Ryozan or someone, but it doesn't really make a huge difference, I think. This team looks very well built from a survival standpoint as well, especially if you decided to fit in Halloween Althemia. So I do agree your light team does seem pretty set, and let me know how it's been going for you. Okay, after that we have a submission from Supa Squeegee, and they say, I'm hoping to pull Lucretia in the upcoming banner. I've been super lucky with light units so far. I just need to upgrade my light altars. Alright, and yes you have. You're another player who has 3 of the 4 5-star light units. Hildegard, Julieta, and Elisanne. And looking at the dragons, the only thing I would consider changing is maybe Silk and Lindworm, swapping those. Unicorn on Edward, maybe Jupiter is a better choice because Unicorn just provides HP. It's one of those things where you can hedge if you're going for Deathless, especially since Edward is a squishier unit. You can stack that HP on him and it might make a difference, so I do see some merit to that. I like your Glorious Tempest. I'm guessing that's just there for pure stats. Elisanne, also like that Levin's Champion on her. I think you could consider the Wormprint on Edward and potentially change it out since Edward is a bit hard to keep at full HP, especially as an AI controlled unit, but that's a really minor gripe and it looks like it's unbound, so probably giving you a lot of stats anyway. Very powerful team overall. Next, we have a team from Iron Adon, and they say, would love your input as to what would be best on a 4th, seeing as maybe the new unit will be Bo. And indeed it was. If I should use him instead of Luca, should I put Ryozan even if I already have an HP buff as my 4th, as he is the one that is built, or should I leave Yuden? So Adon, looking at your team, I think you have a pretty good grasp on this already. Knights Amane at 5 stars, wouldn't really change anything in your dragons, and for the Wormprints, I wouldn't really change anything except maybe the one on Luca. But since that's unbound, you're probably getting a lot of stats out of that. As for your question, I would say Elias might be a bit better than Luca now that you have him because of that Demon's Bane ability, but it is close. It may not be worth it to you for just investing in this event in particular, and overall your power level on your team is high enough that that may not even be necessary. So normally I would say Ryozan would make sense over Yuden, but if you're able to clear the event with Yuden, then you might as well get the extra player EXP. I do like Ryozan because of that curse res up to 100%, but in your case with your might as high as it is, and just the strength of this team in general, with your 2 5-stars leading the way, I don't think you really need to run Ryozan, unless you're having trouble with Deathless or timed clears, but I doubt that's the case. Moving on, we have a team from Pro Crow who says, please give me suggestions to any changes I should make. Also, any advice on a good build for Halloween Ellie, or is skill damage fine on her? So I do like skill damage on Halloween Ellie. That's what I use, honestly, so I wouldn't really change anything there. Other than that, the team looks set up pretty well. Once again, you have 3 of the 5-star light units. I might consider switching Lindworm and Unicorn because Julieta can kind of go either way with strength or HP, but Amane doesn't really need extra HP for anything. And finally, we come to the last team submitted by Mashiki, who asks which one is better for Hope, Curse Res or Recovery Potency? So Mashiki actually provided 2 teams side by side with the change that they're asking about. So on the left you have Hope with As the Snow Falls, which gives that last recovery and curse res, and on the right you have it with Luisa's Hobbies. Honestly, this one is a bit tough to judge. I do think Luisa's Hobbies is better in most cases because of that extra recovery potency, but I would try to gauge how your runs are going in the Resplendent Refrain event. Is Hope getting cursed a problem that keeps happening to you? If that's the case, maybe switch out that Wormprint and use As the Snow Falls for a little bit of chance of curse res, but I think you can probably get away with Luisa's Hobbies, to be honest. The rest of your team looks really nicely set up too. It's rare to see so many elemental weapons, but I do like what you've done with Sisters of the Anvil and Julieta and her innate defense buffs. Hope seems really well built, while your dragons look well placed. And of course, I love that shot of Irfan blinking, so just wanted to point that out. Nice job promoting Irfan to 4-star. Let me know if you decide to go all the way, as some people in this video already did. Alright, and that wraps up my look at everyone's light teams. All in all, I think everyone who submitted did a really good job with their teams. The thing I see most often is definitely the arrangement of dragons. So it depends on what you're going for. If you're going for a timed clear or timed content, I do think you want to prioritize strength on your main attackers. If you're going for survival, at that point maybe you put HP dragons on your attackers just to shore them up so they can live through enemy attacks. I definitely have fun with these videos, and it's a good chance to look at the light pool and other elemental pools as a whole. I know that for a lot of content in this game, you can use mixed element teams, so eventually we will do a squad showcase where we look at mixed element teams, but for now I appreciate you sticking to the guidelines and bringing your best light teams to the table. There are a ton of light units in the game right now because it had 2 showcases dedicated to that element, and that can mean a lot to keep on top of and a lot of choices to make in your team comps. But like I said before, all in all, great job everyone. Thank you so much for participating and for watching. I hope that you have a great weekend. Smash is coming out. I'm really looking forward to that, so I might not be around as much this weekend. Otherwise, take care everyone, and I'll see you next time.